this work session on the handyman conflict ordinance. Begin by going around doing introductions of those in attendance with us for the meeting, starting with Mr. Flynn.
Patrick Flynn, Assembly.
Adam Trombley, Assembly.
WSCN Assembly.
Dick Trainee, Assembly.
Jennifer Johnston, Assembly.
Attorney Hall, Assembly.
Gary Heil, Building Safety Chief, Plumbing Mechanical Inspection.
Jerry Eastman, Director of Community Development.
Sharon Ross, Deputy Director, Development Services and Building Official.
Rick Thornton, Chief of Inspections for Electrical.
Thank you for being here to enlighten us. And with that, Mr. Weaver, Sharon.
I think I'll let Sharon.
Let Sharon lead off. Very well. The floor is yours.
All right, thank you. This ordinance was first brought to you May 8th and was until now so that there could be a work session. I'm drawing on the assembly memo here, and then I'll get into the other handouts that we brought today. But essentially, it was brought to our attention several months ago that our code is not exactly clear as to requirements for a license. There is an understanding that work under $5,000, that get a building permit, there's certain work under $5,000 is exempt from a permit and so on. And there's a perception that that means licensing as well, and that's really not true. If you read the code carefully, you'll see that it is expected that you have a license, whether or not you have a permit, whether or not the work you're doing is exempted from permit for work that is required to be licensed by the state. So the purpose of this ordinance is kind of twofold. One is to clarify that a license is required even for work that isn't necessarily, that may be exempt from a permit, and that to set a threshold level, a certain reasonable level where a license is not necessary for small maintenance type called handyman services. What we're really trying to do is get more in line with the state. The state has, and that's one of our handouts here, the state has a way, they call it a services license for, they exempt work under a certain amount of, under $2,500 from requiring a license, and then between $2,500 and $10,000 doing certain types of construction trades, you need to at least have liability insurance, and then over $10,000 valuation, you need to have a full-on contractor's license. And also, it's important to note that if you represent yourself as a contractor, as anything other than a services provider, you're required to have a contractor's license. So we're trying to clear all that up, bring this city more in line with the state as to how the licensing provisions are administered. There's one, you'll note, difference is that the threshold that we set is $1,000, under which you don't, we would not be looking for a license. The reason $1,000 was chosen, we did work closely with industry on this ordinance, and you'll recall some members of industry testified at the hearing. And the idea was to pick a threshold at which we felt the public protection became in order. Because what this really does is protect the people that are out there hiring people to do things for them. So $1,000 was put forth as that amount. Okay, with that, let's go to this handout right here. And this kind of goes through the state statute on what's required. And that comes from, you can also get the statute regulations by construction contractors, any little book. What we wanted you to know is what does it cost? So if you're going to be deciding, are we going to require a certain group of people who up to this point have not had to go get a contractor's license, called handymen, we're going to require them to do something they haven't done before. What's it going to cost them really? And we thought you would want to know that. So that's what this handout is showing you.
Sure, and if I may, Debbie has a question.
Sorry?
Oh, I've only heard comments about two specific problems, and so I wanted to bring those up, but I didn't want to cut you off.
Oh, okay.
well, the first one was from a guy who does a variety of small jobs. And he said, well, with this, I'm gonna have to get 10 different licenses, which seemed a valid concern. And then the second issue was, how'd you pick $1,000?
Okay. The answer to the first question is, the way the state does it is that you can get up to 3 specialty licenses. And then beyond that, you get a general contractor's license. If you're going to be doing many more, you can either get 3 different specialty licenses, and then once you go to a 4th license, you just go ahead and get a general contractor's license. So that's how that works. The $1,000 was came forward in a meeting that we had with industry, specifically the Anchorage Home Builders Association.
Can I give you an example? I want to do some work in my yard. So I want to hire a guy a small handyman yard. Okay, looking at the list. I want him to fix my sidewalk or put down some bricks so he needs a concrete paving contractor. I want him to fix my fence. He needs to have a fence and guardrail contractor. I want him to plant some flowers. He needs to be a landscaping contractor. Now, admittedly, all these have the $1,000 threshold, so maybe I'm wrong. Lawn irrigation contractor, painting contractor. I could easily see how all those could intersect on one job. So, is there some general category that you could
Well,
create?
yeah, general contractor. So
Which is a pretty high bonding, isn't it?
Well,
Isn't it
that's
expensive?
what we're showing you here in the other handout. We put those costs together for you.
I'm sorry.
So if I was putting together a business like that and was going to be doing all those different specialty trades, I would call myself a general contractor, providing this, and this. Here's what it takes. Your actual cost for your license itself, your state of Alaska contractor's license is $250 biannually, so $125 per year. If you're a specialty contractor, you're required to provide a $5,000 bond. So that's the cost of approximately $300 per year. These numbers came from the state of Alaska, by the way. So I got to get myself a bond. It's going to cost me $300 a year. If I decide to be a general contractor, I need a $10,000 bond, and that price is about $500 per year. So that would be the difference there. I would also be required, if I'm doing work over $2,500, required to have the public liability and property damage insurance. And that ranges, so the number we put in there was just the middle of the range, $1,500 to $3,000, depending on who you are and what kind of business you're doing. So we took the middle in there for an estimate of cost. And that coverage is not less than $20,000 for damage in property, $50,000 for injury, including death of one person, $100,000 more than one person. So I'm cleaning up your yard, I drop a tree on your neighbor and kill him, at least there's some insurance there. It's just, we like to say things like that never happen, but they do. That's why the state requires that insurance. It also covers, the bond would be covering labor, materials, someone who supplied materials didn't get paid, that kind of thing. And then workers' comp, most of the people providing this kind of service are individuals and don't have employees. If you did have employees, you would have, you would have to go ahead and get workers' comp as well. So that's all the cost of a state license. The cost of a municipal license is $360 biannually, so $180.
So Sharon, I'm a teacher. I'm going to paint houses in the summer. I'm going to have to spend $28, $55 to do that.
If you're representing yourself as a painting contractor and that's what you do, yes.
What is it now? If I'm a teacher and I'm painting in the summer, what do I have to pay?
Well, it depends on who stops to ask you. That's
Probably
the thing.
they're not paying anything.
Probably they're not paying anything. But theoretically, right now with the ordinance, with the code as it is today, there's no exemption. So right now, one of our licensing guys could stop and say, you're operating as a painter, do you have a painter's license? And speaking about painting, there actually is a frequent thing that happens with painting contractors is overspray on cars. They'll be painting and they won't necessarily take precautions.
Kid mowing lawns.
Kid mowing lawns.
$28.55?
Wait, could she finish on the overspray?
sorry.
Because
So-
I actually experienced that a number of years ago, so I'm.
So there are issues about these trades that are either property damage issues or safety issues that need to be paid attention to. If you're, let's say you're using a special enamel paint that's toxic, you need to know what you're using and if you're using it properly. Now, we're not necessarily saying, let's say my son is home for the summer and I'm ask him to paint my house. Now, he's not out for hire, he's doing a job for me as a, as a family member. That kind of thing would not require a license. Someone wants to help their, aunt do something, they're working with her as a, as a family member, volunteer, maybe aunt's buying materials. That's not the kind of thing we're looking for here.
A lot of this originated from the members of the Homeowners Association.
I know.
And the reason rationalization is that they're required to be licensed and bonded to do work. And they were seeing many, many people out there representing themselves as licensed and bonded. There really aren't. And basically, unless you check their credentials, their license could be a business license, and their bonding could be, hard to say what the bonding could be. This kind of brings everything into conformity with the code and the licensing requirement. It is an issue of people presenting themselves as something.
I need to let the record reflect that we've been joined by Ms. Drummond and Ms. Gray Jackson. And I have in the queue Dick, Patrick, and Adam. Are you?
Go ahead.
Now.
I'll come back.
Dick?
Bernie, who's gonna issue these licenses, contractor licenses?
I'm going to defer that question
Who's
to.
gonna issue?
Okay, Rick, would you like to explain how our licensing program works right now?
Well, okay. The licensing program, the way we take them in and everything?
Right.
Yeah. Right now, it's the licensing for the construction work comes into our building safety permitting counter. They come in there and provide the credentials from the state, and it just is right there. It's a half-hour process normally.
So if I would be a landscaping contractor, what's the cost for me to get that license?
Cost would be normally just whatever we have here, $180. Oh, normally, we haven't been issuing those in the past.
Right, I know that.
Yeah, but it's $180 for any of the licenses at this time. For,
Well, we do it as a biannual, so it's $360.
yeah, it would be biannual. 360.
Ernie, could you check and see if there's a problem with the title? Because they've got the valuation under 1,000. And if we have a modification, some amendment by an assembly member, I want to make sure we can take it up without an S version. Just check with legal to make, I worry about when there's dollar amounts put in the title. And sometimes we have a problem adjusting.
Yeah.
Can't do it.
Definition.
So you might want an S version that leaves the amount out.
Can't maybe
Do
that.
that after
That's version that's at the same
I
time.
know, that's what we got.
That's legal.
Two questions. First,
Otherwise, we get there Tuesday night.
how available are opportunities to get bonding and liability insurance? Is the marketplace pretty fluid, or is it, I mean, do we know how, if Patrick Flynn, a guy who has no track record in the construction industry, walks in and says, I'd like to get a couple, a bond and some liability insurance, is that available very
For
easily, or?
this level of bonding, my understanding is that it is. If you're out and you're going to get a performance and payment bond for a $5 million construction project, that's where that market's tightened up, as we all know. But for this level of work, my understanding is that it's available.
And then, I guess I'm curious about the enforcement side of this. I mean, one of the complaints I thought I heard from industry was that contractor licensing is not enforced and people are out doing work well beyond what they should be, even with the current limits. What are we gonna do differently when and if this is in place?
Well, we have a code abatement group that is their job, is to basically respond to either complaints about license, about people working either without a permit or without a license, or or to, if they should notice in their travels around town, they're authorized to stop and ask. That's a particular group, that's their charter. Any of our inspectors, however, have the ability to request a license or a permit. An example of something that wouldn't require a permit, that would require a license would be, say, a siding job. Siding doesn't as a standalone item, doesn't require a permit. If it's part of a new construction to weatherize a building and get the CO, it is, but other than that, if you hire a guy to come in and replace all the siding in your house, he does not need a permit, that's exempted. But it should be done by a licensed contractor. And so that's the type of thing that one of our inspectors would stop and ask, do you have a license to be performing this work?
Okay, so if I can just summarize consistent criticism, we're not planning to do anything different in the enforcement arm, we'll just have more stuff to enforce.
We'll have a more clear, actually it will be more clear that it'll be clear to the person who says, well, why are you stopping me? I don't need a permit for this. They'll say, you do need a license. No, you don't need a permit. You do need a license to perform this work. And the important distinction to note, our important item to note, in our fee schedule, the initial offense of working without a license, we will publicize this, of course, and we'll, if the ordinance is passed, we'll make sure that we have, posters up and all that kind of thing. But our fee schedule does allow to waive a fine for first offense. So someone who just didn't understand things had changed wouldn't be necessarily fined for their first time. Just come on in and get your license, and let's go from here.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Adam?
When this passes, I get a guy to do a remodel on my bathroom for $5,000, has to get a permit, has to come in and show that he's licensed, bonded, insured. Does he have to submit those designs to you for code compliance?
Not necessarily.
What's
Depends
the
on the
threshold?
work. Finish type work is not is exempt from a permit. The kind of thing that does.
Is a remodel considered finished work?
Well, if it gets to the point where he's changing walls, doing something structural, yes, they need to come in. Now, the type of plans required for something like that are not expensive. Basically, sketch what you're planning to do.
Basically, on a residential remodel, unless you get into some structural work like enlarging windows or opening exterior walls and all that, most of those inspections are done on site by the inspector, the electrical, plumbing, mechanical. And it's only when you get into really expensive that you would need to go with plans and everything like that.
And that's for any level of work right now, right? So this changes nothing with that.
Exactly.
And then I understand the concept of wanting a level playing field, because right now it may not seem like that. Have you had the opportunity, you've talked with industry, have you had the opportunity to talk with handymen, those who are going to be directly affected by this? How that's going to change their business plan? Will it put them out of work? Have you spoken with them to see the ramifications of this?
We don't really have an organized group to work with on that front. So have we gone out and found any? No. We did, there was a gentleman that testified at the last public hearing. So.
Okay. Okay, that's all.
Dick and then Debbie.
It's a quick question. If I've got a 16-year-old that wants to mow yards in summertime, and he makes $1,200, is he gonna have one of these licenses to go over $1,000? Is there an age limit involved in this?
You mean if he made,
Let's say I've got a 16-year-old in the summertime,
Yeah.
makes $1,200.
I don't see us going to that place.
He's going to the total anyway.
Right,
Yeah,
We're
total
not
per
individual
project.
You're talking, this would be per project.
Maybe the Atwood lawn.
That's in your area, I don't worry about your area.
If a person
What about
has,
mine?
yeah, if a person has a contract, if a person, seriously, a person takes on a major landscaping job for, a big yard, then it would be something
I
to,
just know this kid in town that started out pushing a lawnmower around, and he now owns 3 body shops in town doing car repair. I've known him forever. That's how he got started as a little kid. Made more money than I know what to do with, mowing yards. Thank you.
Debbie?
The only question you didn't quite get to yet is the $1,000.
oh, as I said, the $1,000 came out of discussion. We have monthly meetings with the Home Builders Association, and we had input from them plus additional input, I believe most of you know Clay Porter, some of those, those kind of folks call in, so this is what we would see as reasonable. The idea is that the whole point of doing this is to protect the people. We had a call this morning about the lady with the deck.
True. Yeah.
This morning.
well,
Great example. Go ahead, you want to explain it?
She had a deck installed by a contractor without a permit and all that stuff, and she asked him to put a rail up, and he wouldn't do it, so she called another contractor who came over and looked at it and then refused to touch it because it was just totally not up to code. I think this was like 6 steps going into a house is what I got on the phone. So it's a case where now I'm gonna send the code abatement inspector over Monday, take photos and take a look at it, and we'll issue an NOPR to the person that built it based on her testimony. And then
means
she'll have to
notice.
go to the civil court to get her money back, I guess.
Can you explain the alphabet soup, NOPR?
NOPR is notice of permit requirement. In this case, we notice of license for carpentry.
Yeah.
Or-
Well, I should have had a permit and probably a
Yeah.
license too. I'm not sure who did the work.
I'm real familiar with the contractor side of it. I talked to him, I think we've all talked to him on that. I've had 3 handymen who are really upset contact me about this, and so I'm trying to get to the 1,000 still. And also, I'm thinking about a 5,000, another version. Could you show me where it says 1 lawn or 1 project as a threshold? I can't see it in here.
Okay, that would be, well, if you go to, page 2 or 3,
I'm there, that's for the exception though.
exception, and the exception is for, this is $1,000 would be 1 project, the aggregate amount of $1,000.
Maybe I'm not reading this correctly. Could somebody else read the first sentence under exceptions and tell me, work on 1 project under 1 or more contracts, the aggregate contract amount? To me, that doesn't say what you're saying.
What that means is, let's say, and this, I'm glad you brought that up because it's something that we talked to Al Nagel from the Department of Labor about. That's another important distinction is that it's the entire project value. So let's say someone's adding on in addition to their house and they have a contractor doing everything except the tile and they hire somebody else to do the tile. The whole project could be, the whole project could be $7,500. And the tiling portion could be, let's say, let's stick with the state statute here. This tiling portion could be, $2,000, $2,500. As far as the state's concerned, if that tiling contractor is working on a project that's valued at $7,500, that person needs a license, even though his part of it may be less than the $2,500. That's the state statute.
And
I'm
this,
sorry.
and this conforms with that.
Right.
So,
That's where the language came from.
But
It's actually this, you see me reference AS 0818, 161, and, yeah, that's what the language is, and that is work on 1 project under 1 or more contracts, aggregate contract price of which for labor and materials, all their items is less than $10,000. Then if you're less than that, then it's exempt.
Sharon, if I'm doing 5 lawns, it says 1 or more contracts, I could still, the 1,000 is there.
1 project, though.
Under 1 or more contracts.
Right, but that's, again, let's go back to the addition on the house. There might be 4 different contracts on that house, but it's just 1 project. 4 or 5 lawns is 4 or 5 different projects.
We're not talking right, I'm not clear,
Okay.
I'm sorry. Imagine 5 lawns. Work on 1 or more contracts, that's 5 lawns. So the aggregate amount shall not exceed $1,000.
1 project.
1 project, though.
I'm sorry, I'm missing it.
Prefaced by work
First-
on 1 project. Under 1 or
project.
more contracts.
Consider
Oh, all
1
right.
project
So
as
a lawn
1
is a
address.
project, is what
Right.
you're saying. A contract is not a project. A contract is not.
Zip apples lawn, right?
Okay, sorry.
Are you good?
If
I may,
Getting there.
Yes, if you may.
just a further explanation, and the reason that language has to be there, because an individual may say, okay, I'm gonna write a contract with you for $999, and they say, well, I'll write a second contract with you for $999, when the aggregate's really over $1,000 now. But that's a way that, and they've used that in the past, certain people have, to kind of get out from under, you know, the requirements of the law. It's kind of a scapegoat thing. This would cover that, and that's the reason why that language is the way that it is.
Adam?
All right, back to Mr. Trainey's example. Just for clarification. No, it's actually pretty valid now. Not that it wasn't valid before, but valid is not the right term. It makes more sense to me now. I apologize. Okay. So to understand this is that if I'm a contractor and I'm doing a landscaping project that costs $10,000, and I say, you know what, Mr. Trainey's son will mow the yard in this landscaping project, and I'm going to pay him $400 to do it. Technically, Mr. Trainey's 16-year-old son would have to go out and get licensed, bonded, insured, because the cost of the project is over $10,000 at which he's working on, but he'll only get paid $400. Am I correct on that?
Let's back up a second. You're correct in one way, but lawn mowing may be a bad example because
Well,
it's
no,
maintenance.
because it's
Lawn
not,
mowing
because
is maintenance.
it's a landscaping contractor. I mean,
But
what's-
it's maintenance. That would be considered a maintenance service. That's a different world. So maybe we should
It's not
be.
new work per se. I
Right.
think that's,
So a lawn mowing service does not need to get a landscaping contracting license?
I wouldn't think
I
so.
don't think that's not
If
the
you're
intent.
building retaining walls and putting in water features and things like that.
For lawn mowing. So it's specific.
I'm with that. Yeah, fine for that. But if, okay.
But your concept about the portion of the work being, if he was coming in and building a rock wall, then yeah, that would be a question.
So do you have definitions for a landscaping contractor and what that includes?
We do, all that would go to the state statute. Everything goes to the state statute. The only thing we're doing is piggybacking onto that by the municipal license and the different $1,000 versus $2,500. So landscaping contractor, grades, fills, and levels ground. Hauls fill, gravel, topsoil, sand, similar construction materials. Constructs water drainage systems, dewatering in ponds, performs hydroseeding, or installs grass, shrubbery, trees, or other ornamental or decorative plants. Landscaping contractor does not prepare land for construction of a building or structure. That's the state's definition.
All right, thank you. That's all, Mr. Chairman.
Harriet?
I had some similar concerns about the fact that the hundreds of handymen in this community don't have any way of expressing their concerns in here other than through our public notice system on this issue, which is not in good shape. Madam Clerk, I think we're going to be working on that. And the young people doing doing lawn mowing and stuff like that. I mean, I remember when my son wanted to go to work, there's a whole list of rules about what ages young people have to be to do this, that, and the other. A lot of that is probably now currently under the radar and illegal, and we're just lucky more people aren't losing their fingers, because of liability issues and so on and so forth. How do we intend to address that part?
The age
Mhm.
issue?
Yeah, you'd be amazed at how few things people under 15 or 16 are allowed to do, even under 18.
Oh, no, I understand completely. I've worked in that world, especially hiring in the villages, trying to hire, native kids to work. And there are certain things, working with knives, they can't do. There are restrictions. But in terms of our code abatement guys right now, they see a guy mowing a lawn, they're not gonna stop. Again, lawn mowing, maybe we shouldn't have gotten onto that track because it really isn't part of this. It's a maintenance service, but
I don't think we're gonna be enforcing child labor laws.
it's not really our plan. The Department of Labor you know, they also have inspectors around town, and they do, you know, that's something that's very much in their radar. That wasn't our intent when we put this ordinance together. If we came up upon a situation like that, where we're concerned that it's, you know, kids in over their heads without their expertise, or especially, what we would probably do is call the Department of Labor and ask for, say, hey, guys, this is something that you might want to be aware of.
Debbie?
Well, the two others that I can think of several that are surprising. If J.C. Penney's or Giant Don's Carpet, they're putting down rugs. Are they a floor covering contractor? So they'll have to get licensed.
Their installers should have licenses.
Okay, and particularly out, I think in both ends of town, there's a lot of septic installers, rent a backhoe guy. You know.
Would we not want them to be licensed?
Well, I'm just asking, they are covered under
Yes.
this?
They would be excavating contractors.
And I think they are licensed now. They already are.
I'm sorry, what?
You better look at your list, Jennifer.
Yeah, I just,
You good, Debbie?
Well, I don't actually know if I'm good, because I have heard opposition to this. And I'm considering an S version with a $5,000, but I don't know.
I would caution on the S version, and I totally understand the desire to tweak the number, but do keep in mind that we are not allowed to do anything less than the state. We can do more stringently than the state, but not less than the state. So it would seem to me if there was to be S version, it would line up with the state at the 2,500 threshold for the insurance requirement.
Considering the state hasn't been enforced for a gazillion years, I don't know. But I hear you.
Okay. Jennifer?
I'm just curious, you mentioned earlier about the siding contractors. They don't have to have a license?
They do have to have a license. They don't necessarily have to have a permit to do
Permit.
siding work.
So you can have your house fully sided without a permit?
Yes, you can.
Elvie?
Mr. Chairman, thank you very much. Just one really quick comment in regard to Ms. Oceana's comment that she may be bringing forward the $5,000, and I'm not necessarily against it. I'm almost thinking I'm there. But I just want to remind folks, no, I'm not an attorney, but as Mr. Training knows, if you do that, it's going to be a brand new ordinance.
I know, which would delay this.
Well, you said S version, but
I'm
anyway,
sorry.
just so
Pardon me.
everybody knows it's going to be new.
Totally agree.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I don't have a problem with that either. I think that this is something, if this passed on Tuesday, would it go into effect immediately and obviously affect any work that people have contracted for
We can
this summer?
adjust that line 37 on page 3 and 3.
Because I'm not interested in pulling this on this community this summer because, you know, contracts are underway, all of that other stuff. I think we need some time to educate folks on the existence of this, especially the handyman community that isn't necessarily paying attention, because they're out busy trying to earn a living, and not paying attention to what we're doing down here at City Hall. So I don't have a problem with delaying in order to have the conversation about raising the limits. I have a problem with that too. If you have somebody install a $900 window, they're pretty soon, they're gonna get to that $1,000 limit in no time at all, you know. And never mind buying the paint for a, you know, reasonably sized house.
Yeah.
And quit attacking my neighbors, Mr. Train. The Atwood property is in West Anchorage, it is not in downtown. Chester Creek is the limit.
Don't go there. Whatever, if you go to Chester Creek.
We got bigger lawns.
You know,
than
the other
should
thing
be
is now,
active.
like your doors,
You'd be
if you
surprised.
take your doors changed, they now have to check the type of paint that's on the door, because the EP requires them to do lead testing. So that adds cost to changing anything.
I mean, so
I took up all
the door
time
you
in my
take
house.
out, you have to check that?
Yes, by federal
Okay,
law.
Sharon, we're gonna come
Certain
back to
age,
you. We're
mid-
kind of having sidebar conversation here. If you remember where we were at before we started these questions, I have no one in the queue.
Okay. Well, the only other thing that I'd like to point out to you, the other handout that you have, is just as an example, people are wondering, well, what kinds of things require permit or inspections, and also a license. This is a flyer that we've been working with the HFC Energy Rebate Program. And we had a lot of calls from mechanical contractors who had said, well, I was called in to do a warranty fix on this boiler. I got in there and there were all these problems with it. It was obviously not done by a licensed contractor in the beginning. And so we talked to HFC. It turns out to become a pervasive problem. And this is just an illustration of why we think the licensing is an issue that needs clarification, and we need to be serious about it. So we worked with HFC, and they're now handing out this flyer to anyone who is in their program within the municipality. We had hoped that they would not give them their rebate check until they showed that they had a permit, but couldn't quite get that far. So these kinds of things as examples of what would require a licensed contractor and a permit inspection. So a fuel-fired appliance, installing or replacing an exhaust duct. It seems like no big deal, just put in new dryer venting. It can be a very big deal. If it's done wrong, it can cause fires, can cause all kinds of problems. Some things seem innocent, but they really can turn into bad problems if they're not done right by someone who understands exactly what they're doing, has had the trade background. Installing or replacing a window that requires the opening to be framed bigger. If you're just replacing a window like for like, you don't necessarily need a permit or license to do that. If you are cutting into that structural framing and changing things, that should be done by a contractor who understands framing and what it is they're supposed to be doing. So these replacement of a roof or any installation requires new electrical wiring. It needs to be done by a licensed electrician. So these are the kinds of things that seem like it's just regular work, but it is important. And one other thing to emphasize, homeowners will still be able to do anything. A homeowner can do any work at all in their home. But certain work does require a permit. Like a homeowner can paint their home, no license, no permit, nothing required. A homeowner who decides to replace his boiler needs to get a permit so it can be inspected by our folks to make sure that it was done safely. So there's no changes to what a homeowner is allowed to do, which is everything.
Do I need to get a permit to replace a toilet, which I've done several times?
Uh-oh.
Would you
My
like to
own,
take that one?
myself? Yes, I can do that.
You're on public record.
But I can't do yours.
Breaking the
Oh,
law.
yeah, by code.
Mine are fine.
You're going to get your answer.
Per the plumbing code, the only exemption for plumbing is removing and replacing the same toilet, and that's to unstop and or replace floor coverings or new wax rings, for example. If you replace the fixture, be it a toilet, a lab, a kitchen sink, that is a permittable item. It does require permit inspection.
And the
Per
reason
the
is,
code.
We find out that
Well,
your version.
one of the reasons is because per the code also, and the laws, all plumbing fixtures are required to be third-party listed, much like electrical products are UL listed. More people are familiar with that. But there's also standards for plumbing products that they meet minimum standards. If you're buying a product and they sell them in the box stores that are not approved, and they're really doing a disservice to their customer, but there's not a law that says that you can't sell them. There's just a law that says you can't install them. And so it's all about standards, and we know that if it's listed, it's a quality assurance program, an ongoing quality assurance that makes certain that that product still is built to minimum standards. Otherwise, you don't know where the materials come from. You don't know the integrity. It may look the same as the one that's twice as much, but it may not be the same quality, and could potentially crack. If you're as a water closet, if you're sitting on it, for example, it could injure a person if it were to break on you, or it could have materials in it that if it was from China, for example, they found radiation in the cast iron. There could be radiation in
Radioactive
some of the products they use for their
Are you sorry you asked
plumbing fixtures and stuff. So it really comes down to making certain that the proper fixtures are being used.
Well, if that's the case, why aren't we asking Home Depot and Lowe's and Central Plumbing and Heating to post this kind of information in their stores right above the toilet that Central Plumbing sold me, for example, several years ago. I bought 2 or 3 of them on sale, and as my toilets in my over 60-year-old house poop out, pardon the phrase, I replace them, you know, and I'm not gonna pay anybody for a permit for an $89 toilet that I've done. I mean, this is a buyer beware kind of thing, in my opinion. I think you're gonna get a lot of resistance to a whole lot of this stuff. That's just a personal.
I want to let the record note, Harriet, I really appreciate you bringing up the toilets because you've stimulated a lot of questions here, beginning with Ellie.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Fortunately, my 2 toilets are just fine. But in the event something goes wrong, you know, and I'm not a handy woman, I don't do stuff like that, okay? What's it gonna cost me to put a new toilet in?
Let's speak to that, Gary.
Yeah, well, I'm not certain, you know, the exact cost. I mean, the cost of obviously the.
Not the
fixture.
material, not the fixture cost.
Okay,
I know
well, I mean,
that
the
much.
per hour cost, you know, I imagine, you know.
No, I mean license-wise.
Well, license-wise, if you're gonna have a professional do it or somebody other than
No, already
yourself
said.
as a homeowner, that is a plumbing fixture and that is required to be done by a licensed plumbing contractor.
Okay.
And that's not only city law, it's state law as well.
Okay.
And that's what drives the city law.
But they
Okay.
should already be carrying that license.
Anyway,
Right.
all right, well, I'll just hope for the best.
You shouldn't be
And so-
paying the whole cost of that
No, I
license for your
get it.
toilet. That
I
should
get
be
it.
a cost of overhead to this
So I
contractor.
can't ask a friend to do it. So anyway, also in
If they're
terms.
related to you, sort of.
Well,
Well,
we,
thank you.
to be honest, it's
Yeah,
kind of what we
Jennifer,
call
I
the friends and
appreciate that.
family. I mean, if it's a friend, they're not doing it for hire, we're not going,
Right.
you know, we allow that, we can do that.
Okay,
You know, that's-
all right, well, I'm gonna still hope for the best.
It's for
And
hire
then-
is the key word, you know.
My second question is, if I may, Mr. Chairman, is roof. So you put the same exact roof on, you have to get a license to do that?
Yes.
Okay.
And the reason is, it might seem like no big thing to pull off some shingles and put on some new shingles.
Well, I don't have shingles.
Right, if you're doing a whole re-roof, it's a question of what's underneath, you know, what damage is underneath, being sure that the, what is replaced is of the same structural quality that was originally intended, that kind of thing.
Okay, well, I appreciate that, and I said the good news for me is I'm not gonna be doing any of it, so. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Jennifer, you put yourself. Dick?
Let's go back to roof. So let's say I own the house, I decided to have my, let's say I had 6 sons re-roof the house. Do they have to go and get a contractor's license, or can I have them, since they live there every now and then, re-roof the whole house without worrying about it?
Yeah, that's family.
Keep in mind, 3
Yeah.
are attorneys and they will sue you.
You may want to consult your attorney before you
Answer that question.
Your family members can help you, either your family is perfectly able to help you. That's not required. You're the primary resident of the house and they're your family.
Okay, good. Because all I do is bring in something to drink. They do the roof. Thank
But the
you.
key is that you're a resident of the house.
Yeah.
You still
I just wanted to check since I got you here.
You still need a
Because
permit.
they're doing it in August.
You still need a permit, but you wouldn't need a license.
Adam.
You would need a permit to do
You would need
it?
a permit and the inspection.
Oh, heavens. That's way too much city involvement.
Yeah.
I think to some degree that the exemption has to be rewritten or reworded because, you know, if, to go back to my earlier example, if the project's $10,000 and I'm gonna hire somebody to come in, and maybe mowing lawn isn't a good example because that's more maintenance, but, you know, Mr. Trini wants to hire his son, or someone wants to hire his son to pay him $400 to plant some trees or plant some flowers. You know, there's something to be said for hard work, and I think what we're doing is doing a disservice to some people by allowing certain individuals to come in and do work on a project that maybe technically falls under landscaping, but for good Lord, I'm planting some flowers, I'm planting some trees on a bigger project, and some kid wants to make some money over the summer. And I think the unintended consequences of this are pretty staggering, as we've already experienced through some of the examples with toilets and roofs. So I don't know the exact wording how we should change that, but
No,
we
this,
should definitely.
this is not directed towards towards that situation. This is directed towards open up the call expert pages, or go on to Craigslist, and you'll see licensed, bonded, insured. License means they have a business license. Bonded, most of them, if you ask for it, can't produce it. Insured means they have insurance on their truck. This is to clean up the abuses of the system by the people that are representing themselves as contractors, fix-it, for hire, to the general public. This is to have them require them to meet the same requirements as the state statute requires for that kind of work.
Well, I don't disagree with that. We are talking about government. And once you give government the authority to regulate under some degree, you're going to get at some point, maybe not yourself, but someone who's going to extend this to the full extent that they possibly can. I mean, let's not be foolish here. We're talking about government. That's all, Mr. Chair.
Anyone else in the queue? Sharon, do you have anything else? Jim?
What's a solid fuel appliance?
Like a wood burning stove, for
So
example.
putting in a wood-burning stove needs a contract?
Well, yes, and actually that would have to be, you'd have to be a mechanical contractor, actually for that.
Okay.
Now, not as the homeowner, but yeah, and the reason is, if the flue isn't done properly, if the
Oh, improper clearances would burn the house down.
Oh, yeah.
Since you get 400 and some degrees there.
Well, I think if anything, you can find examples on both ends. I mean, you can certainly safeguard people, and you can also put government where it's not needed. So it's like a, you know, it's not, you gotta find the middle.
It's not an exact science.
You got it.
I would say that if an S version is contemplated, that the main difference between what we have here in front of you and the state statute is $1,000. If an S version contemplated, the cleanest thing to do is be match it up exactly with the state requirements, which can be found, the reference AS, I've given you the reference that you can find it. You can find this online if you go to Division of Corporations, Business and Licensing, they have a PDF form. It has, it takes out the contractors, it also has architects, engineers, and land surveyors. It's a handy place to go to get this information.
If I may, this is my 20th year as an inspector of a municipality, and I've seen the aftermath of what's happened with the homeowners, and this is really to protect the homeowner. That's all we're trying to do here, is to provide some level of protection. I know there's going to be, some, extra costs for contractors and such, but it's about protecting homeowners' biggest investment in their life, other than their kids, I guess, in some cases. But, what happened, Rick and myself, we deal with these on a weekly basis where people have had people do work that weren't properly licensed or didn't know what they were doing, and now they're in a civil lawsuit and they're having to hire then a licensed contractor to come in and fix the mess that they had, And some of this stuff is dangerous, I mean, very dangerous. That they're very fortunate that they didn't cause an explosion or have structural failure and loss of life. So it's just really a matter of trying to get a grip on the individuals and inform them and make certain they're not doing things beyond what they're supposed to be doing.
The other thing we were talking about that should be mentioned before we close is oftentimes what will happen is someone comes in to do something small. Maybe I'm just going to clean up a painting problem in your bathroom. You've got a water stain. So I'm coming in to clean that up. Well, I decide I need to replace the sheetrock. I open up the wall, I find a leak in the pipes. Next thing, it's bigger, 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 and now we're in the step that a person with a license should be doing. So that's the problem with the folks out there that all the fix-it guys and handyman guys that get in over their head. And then oftentimes, believe me, this happens, they disappear, not to be heard from again, don't answer calls from the homeowner. I mean, that's really what we have to deal with.
Any other questions? Seeing here and none, we're going to adjourn this meeting. We start again at 12.
Thank you very much, everybody.
Main